Good morning, good day, good afternoon, whatever time you are watching this. It is June 23rd, so we're kind of almost towards the end of the first month of the 100-day battle. And here in central Ohio and pretty much most of the way down as I was coming down from Cleveland today, the rain is falling. And so that usually means not good. All right, golf is not going on, and heat looks like it's coming in next week, so I'd suspect Mr. Hicks has got a bunch of stuff to tell us and forewarn us about. Online today, we got Todd Hicks, Dr. Tyler Carr, Dr. Dave Shetlar, and Dr. David Gardner. Dr. Gardner, take it away with the pestilence and weeds.
All right, greetings, everybody. So what I wanted to talk about today, and this will seem like kind of an odd tangent that I go off to begin with, but what we have here is an orchid. Okay, and the orchids, it's a very large family of plants. There's 28,000 species. Most of these are epiphytes. That is, they don't root in soil. They grow up on big, tall tropical trees, and they have specialized roots that can capture atmospheric moisture, but they have really pretty flowers, and that's why you buy these usually attached to a piece of wood in a flower shop. That said, there are some terrestrial orchids, those that will root in soil and survive in this climate. This is an example of one of them. It's right outside of the building that I'm presenting right now from. But there are other species like this guy that was introduced in the state of New York in the early 1900s. And like a lot of things that was introduced from other parts of the world because some chucklehead thought that it was pretty, this has become an invasive species and a problem. Okay, so this is called broadleaf helleborine. You can look at the Latin binomial there. Now, a shout out to Michigan State University. Their extension service has a wonderful publication on how to handle this particular plant. So I'm going to go over the very basics if you're seeing something that looks like this in your landscaping beds or in your lawns, but you can refer to their publication for much more information. But this is a terrestrial orchid that has become a weedy or invasive problem. So unlike the one that's outside of our building that is staying in place, this particular species is spreading all over the place into people's yards, into people's landscaping beds. The thing is that it has broad leaves, right? But it's not a broadleaf plant, it's a monocot. So, you know, kind of like how tulips have broad leaves, but that's a monocot. What that means is that if you see this and you want to get rid of it, you probably will want to get rid of it. Know that most broadleaf herbicides are not effective, okay, because this is a monocotyledonous plant. And so things like 2,4-D, MCPP, dicamba, etc. Now, look, if you spray those, you know, you might damage the plant a little bit, kind of like, you know, how if you look at the label for the herbicides that we use in turf to control dandelions, it says don't be spraying these in flower beds where you have bulbs. Right, it will cause some damage, but it will not, in most cases, kill the plant. So if the goal is to get rid of this, know that glyphosate, if you're in a landscaping bed, has activity, but then also the herbicide sulfentrazone. So that's something that we use in turf to control broadleaf weeds, but also some monocots, right, like nutsedge, wild onion, wild garlic. But sulfentrazone does have activity on this broadleaf helleborine too. So I've got 5 or 6 emails this year so far about this particular plant, and I don't receive emails all that often from the public. So, you know, like I'm assuming that this is something that's becoming more and more of an issue. So if you see something that looks like that, and you're wondering what it is, like I said, check out that publication from Michigan State. All right, the other thing that I wanted to talk about is I'm getting a lot of pictures that look like this, and people are asking me, you know, what disease is this, or is this rough bluegrass? More than likely what that is, you know, it was dry here in Ohio recently. And so when the grass plant starts to dry down, if you look at this zoom in of the leaf, you see how that one leaf that's a little bit right of the center there, it's kind of green on the bottom and kind of brown on top. Well, that's what leaves look like when it's starting to get too dry for the plant to support, you know, hydrating all of the leaf tissue. And all of that leaf tissue that's brown after a rain, that's not coming back, right? And so the plant has to, after dry periods like that, completely regenerate the leaf tissue from scratch, from the crown, which is that tiny little region at the base of the plant. And that's going to take a little bit of time. So right after the rain, what happens is that all of the leaf tissue that wasn't excessively dry rehydrates and it gets nice and green again. But then that leaf tissue that was too dry that's going to continue to fade and go away. And like I said, the plant has to regenerate new leaf tissue from the crown, and that's going to take some time. So more than likely, if you see something like this or that previous picture, that's what you're looking at. Now, it could be rough bluegrass, but if it's rough bluegrass, you should be able to see relatively stout stolons growing in the at the surface of the soil. Okay, so if you don't see those stout stolons growing at the surface of the soil, you don't have a dormant rough bluegrass problem. You have your cool season grass that you meant to grow got too dry, and now it has to completely regenerate its leaf tissue, which is going to take a period of time. And that's what I have for today.
Thank you, Dr. Gardner. Mr. Todd Hicks.
Before we go there, Dave, could you point out that some of these lawns do have a layer of thatch, and when that thatch completely dries out, it's almost impossible to get some water back to that turf. And so sometimes you can have a delay of the green up of that turf because the water just isn't getting there right now.
Dave, I think you made an excellent point, and actually, I think you said it well enough that I'm not going to repeat what you said verbatim. We're just going to go with what you said, but that is an excellent point.
Okay.
Well, and the other thing, just to go back to the hellebore, the weed, Dave. I mean, I have it in the garden at our house, and it's extremely frustrating to hand pull it out. It snaps off the rhizome, and you don't get. There is no satisfaction to it. It's super annoying. And it just keeps spreading and spreading.
Yeah, so I mean, for the same reason that Canada thistle has invasive characteristics because of the deep aggressive rhizome system, that's the same thing that we have going on with that orchid species. So yeah, it's better to use the systemic herbicide glyphosate where you can. But like I said, sulfentrazone, it's in a different class of chemistry, kind of like same as flumioxazine. So it has activity on grasses and broadleaf weeds. And that one, they found that to be relatively more effective. So if it's growing in turf, mow it and then apply the sulfentrazone to the stubble.
Thanks, Dave. Sorry, Todd, we hijacked you.
That's all right. Good morning, everybody, or good day, everyone. So far this year has been really boring to be a pathologist. It's been very inactive, except for about 2 weeks ago when we had that hot streak. I did get a few samples in the lab and phone calls on some take-all problems on golf courses. But really, that's been about it up until this week when the rains came back and our temperatures started getting back to a little more normal. So as of today here at the Turf Center, we have leaf spot back active. Red thread has become active again on ryegrass and some of our high cuts turf. And dollar spot has finally hit, mostly in our fairway cut. We're seeing a little bit in the greens cut, but we're about 2 to 3 weeks behind on a lot of these diseases, which I'm guessing everyone else is the same since I'm not hearing anything, no phone calls, no emails, no samples. So what that's going to mean with these off and on rains coming in, as Ed pointed out, and the temperatures getting back to a little more normal, I think we're going to see a great influx of diseases coming in. I think if you can afford to, or if you have the capability to, take a look at your fungicide program. And you may want to shift things backwards. In other words, maybe come out with some heavy hitters right now, because we're really back in the day when you were thinking the beginning of June, that's when you use your heavy hitters, and we really didn't need them back then. So I would hit things hard now so that when we do get into the high heat and that damage that's never going to go away till September, October, we don't have to face that. So be very vigilant on what's going on. Let your people know that they really need to scout right now and keep their eyes and ears open, or their eyes open to see what's going on so you can stay at the top of the diseases. That's about it, Ed.
Thanks, Todd. One other thing that I noticed or popped up this week, and this was more on Twitter, Dr. Bill Kreuzer over in Nebraska was talking about etiolation. The other thing he talked specifically about was the fact that he'd been trying different growth regulators, and if I remember reading correctly, he's not seeing any positive impact or changes from any of the regulators. Now, maybe I'll be shot at for saying it that way. I missed something he said, but as I understood it, he didn't have any solutions, and he was looking for solutions still. And I would expect, Todd, with the moisture and where the temperatures are at, we're probably going to see some of that etiolation popping up again with the moisture. The other thing, and I don't know if it's unique to us, our green up in Worcester has a fair amount of whitea mixed stands kind of hanging around. Kind of interesting how it's
Okay.
expanding or extending its window a little bit. All right, following that, Dr. Shetlar.
Well, I don't have a much real doom and gloom, except I was out taking a look at some ornamental insects, and then a Japanese beetle comes flying by. And so that's the first sighting I've had of a Japanese beetle this season. So they with the warmer weather, if you're in an area where there are Japanese beetles, they really should be evident next week. Likewise, I ran my light trap night before last, and so yesterday morning I was greeted with a northern mass chafer in my light trap, and so that's the first one of those that I've captured that have emerged. So we're about, I'd say a week to 10 days late for our normal white grubs to emerge. But I have all the confidence in the world that they will be emerging over the next week or two. Also remember that both of these mate after they emerge. The females go back in and lay their eggs. Typically, they'll lay their eggs if they're Japanese beetle in green turf. So turf that's recovered will be most susceptible for the Japanese beetle. Mass chafer, since they come out at nighttime, they can't tell whether the turf is green or brown or whatever. They just come up, mate, go back in and lay their eggs. So again, with the soil moistures that we've got recovering and the higher temperatures, it looks like we might have a good year for the white grub egg survival. And that means that we will have grubs this year. And so just wanted to warn you with that. Again, remember that Bayer and some of the other companies that are producing imidacloprid or merit have moved their application window to July. I know some of you are still putting it down in late May, early June. For the past few years, with the excessive rainfalls that we've had, we've seen some breakthroughs or failures for those applications. And I believe that's why Bayer is specifically recommending they want you to put their imidacloprid or merit down right at grub egg hatch, which is generally the middle of July to the early part of August, so that you would have the maximum amount of the active ingredient there. Most of the other materials, the things like arena, clothianidin, still seems to be holding in with May or June applications, but you could still apply it in July, get excellent control. And acelepryn, May, June applications are ideal for that. But in our test studies, applications of acelepryn in July and early August still achieved near 100% white grub control. Last one, did get a couple of black cutworms in my light trap. Just want to warn the golf course superintendent that apparently the second generation of black cutworm adults will be flying and laying eggs. If you've applied a diamide to your golf course greens and tees, you're probably good for the season. But if you couldn't afford that, keep an eye out for those little pock marks that the cutworms make on the greens and tees, and get ready to pull a trigger on a pyrethroid to knock them out quickly before they cause much damage. Okay, that's all I've got for this session.
Thank you, Dave. Much appreciated. Least but not last, Dr. Carr with some very interesting news.
Yeah, so I'll kind of start off with it seems like this rain that we're getting is, it's bad for golf and bad for playing sports, but it's really good for our grass, at least the recovery aspect. So this is the drought monitor from last week, where we had moderate drought conditions. But this last week, all the rainfall that we had alleviated a lot of that, and the rainfall that we're getting right now may alleviate even more of it. So, this is a good thing for recovering. And if we can, I saw some temperatures in the 70s next week, probably get some in the 80s. Hopefully we can continue to have adequate soil moisture so that these cool season grasses can recover a little bit. One thing that is not liking this type of weather that we're having, this kind of cool, wet weather, is is Bermuda grass. I mean, Pam talked about Bermuda grass last week a little bit. But, you know, Bermuda grass is one of those things that has really deep roots. It's very drought resistant. It does really well here in late summer, early fall. This is a picture Ryan DeMay posted on Twitter of some pretty deep roots of a hybrid Bermuda grass field. But it has its problems with this cool weather. We got this photo. Todd probably recognizes this photo. We got an email yesterday of one of the Bermuda grass fields that is managed in Ohio that has this patchy looking area all over the field. And Todd, I don't know what you think. It kind of reminds me of is it creamy leaf blight? Something like that. I think it's the same causal agent that is for red thread and pink patch. But I think that's something that they're going to bring a sample in and can diagnose next week.
They are going to bring a sample in, and the first rule of diagnosis: you never give a direct answer to what you think it is.
No, well, I'm more speculating, and I'm like, oh, well, this is maybe what it is, based off of just some pictures. But I don't know. I always like to speculate, and then if it goes wrong, then we just blame Todd for it. But you know, it's one of those things that Bermuda grass isn't growing right now, and so if there are any diseases, even if they're just cosmetic, they're not really going to grow out of them. So every couple years we have big issues here where that Bermuda grass is not recovering. From a larger scale, this is more of in the southern transition zone. You can see issues from overseeded Bermuda grass where you have Bermuda grass, you apply or you plant perennial ryegrass into it for the fall and spring, and then you spray it out, and you're left with something like this, where the Bermuda grass is weak, injured, and you know, you play this game every year of trying to reestablish Bermuda grass just so you can put perennial ryegrass out in the fall, and the Bermuda grass isn't necessarily well equipped at that point to survive the winter and the traffic that's associated with the winter. And so while Bermuda grass can have some benefits in this area, it may be more limited to sports that have heavy traffic in the summer or early fall, like American football. Baseball fields, I would still be recommending cool season grasses. Otherwise, you may end up having something like you see here and fighting that battle all summer. So in really good news, we have just launched the new Buckeye Turf website. This is buckeyeturf.osu.edu. This is the one-stop shop for everything associated with the Turfgrass Science program here, from our academic programs, the certificate programs, research, extension. This is a place where you can find pretty much everything that we put out, even these Turf Team Times recordings as well. So I encourage you to check that out. And that's something that we're really excited about, and a good resource for everybody here. So I will move on.
All right, Tyler. Thank you, sir. Okay, folks, we will keep it short and sweet this week. Hopefully the rain doesn't cause too much issues. I know the forecast has rain all the way through Tuesday. So anything that you felt like you were missing out on, you're probably going to catch up on. Expect to see some further information about Research Field Day on August 1st coming out next week. We kind of start to set our schedule up. Range of topics for the OTF Field Day on August 1st, and also a range of topics for the Ohio Lawn Care Field Day on August 2nd in Columbus, and then August 7th in Worcester will be the event. So expect to see that information coming up next week. All right, with that, we'll say thank you, and we will talk to you all next week.